It's about time that we talk about the war on loot boxes that the European Parliament is continuing to struggle with. And it's not like they're the only ones. There are other countries that have raised concerns about loot boxes in video games. This is a classic case of one greedy party ruining it for everyone else. The main targets are games like FIFA, 2K, and Genshin Impact. In these games, you can essentially pay unlimited amounts of money to gamble on a random draw that will improve your in-game experience until the game decides that isn't cool anymore. This isn't exactly a war on loot boxes. This is a war against EA and gacha games. EA have specifically been listed in meetings, and in 2018, the bans were initiated by Battlefront 2, another EA game. But if laws are passed, there will be collateral. Part of this collateral would be Counter-Strike Global Offensive, as the game features a series of loot boxes, such as cases, major capsules, and community capsules. All of these items need money deposited to either open directly or to obtain a key that can open the item. In a typical slot machine style, a random item is then obtained. And when it comes to Valve, they may even see harsher punishment because there is a real-world economy tied to these items. This would raise further questions about the ethics of children having access to a market like this in any capacity. As Counter-Strike fans, we really only know of the Belgium and Netherlands bans, as they have directly affected Counter-Strike. In the Netherlands, you're done for. You need to use a VPN to open cases. In Belgium, Valve introduced the X-ray scanner, which was a great loophole, as it showcases the item you would obtain before you make the purchase. And under some kind of technicality, this evades the laws that were put in place. But these discussions have been happening for a long time. For 2023, the discussion has been brought up again, but now we have more direction on when changes will be implemented, what changes could be implemented, and how Valve can react, specifically with Counter-Strike. The European Parliament held a vote, so a portion of the European Commission could insert itself further in the video game industry. This includes more information considered for age ratings, social risk, different privacy standards, more accessibility to video games, specifically those who are disabled, for whatever reason, their own video game award system, and of course, continuing research on the dangers of loot boxes. This is much different than the 2018 blanket bans that we saw in the Netherlands and Belgium. 2018 was an attack. Loot boxes are bad, as it's basically gambling for children, and that needs to be eliminated. As we now know, the ban was quite ineffective and caused more harm than good. This recent vote is members of parliament understanding that they don't understand. They don't know the children and young adults that interact with games. They don't know the consequences legislation can create in this space. So they are now inserting themselves in the industry. If you are someone like me who has money actually invested in a video game that runs off of these principles, this is good news. From face value, it seems like their approach has changed, and if loot boxes are going to be a focus for controversy in the future, it would be taken in baby steps instead of blanket bans like in 2018. My initial takeaway is that we won't be seeing any new laws coming soon from this committee. When I initially covered this topic years ago, I was under the impression that the death of loot boxes was imminent, but COVID delayed any discussions. I think it's fair to say that a worldwide pandemic that caused entire countries shutting down is more important than Timmy opening a CSGO case. But instead of more bans, it seems like video games exploding during COVID, bringing more attention to things like esports, streaming, and YouTube content, has the older generations more interested in the culture. Not to say that loot boxes fit into that positive side of gaming, but hopefully opinions can move from children are wasting their lives and money on video games to eventually somewhat understanding that kids are finding a passion in video games, and in many cases, outside of the worst offenders like EA, loot boxes contain forms of expression. If we can move the pointer towards that perspective, then the loot box conversation may die down. But really what we need is for EA to go out of business. Regardless of what happens, loot boxes are an issue in gaming, and I think even the biggest Genshin Impact enjoyers can admit that. If it really comes to restricting or outright banning these mechanics, then Valve has some work to do. But they've done it before. When Valve was caught up in a lawsuit from 2016 gambling scandals, they took action against gambling sites. gave them fair notice so the users could withdraw their items and sites could cash out. Cash out sites still existed even though it doesn't match their policy, but that's because they know the market would die without it. And in my opinion, some of this has to do with Valve actively hiring economists. As you may know, Valve has a pretty fluid work environment, but they will hire you because you specialize in one specific field. If you go to Valve's website, you can still apply for basically every field including finance, and I think this plays a part. I've seen information thrown around that there are 5 market analysts working at Valve, and they would track Dota 2, Team Fortress 2, and CSGO market performance. Unfortunately, I cannot find any source for this, and even searching through the employee list, I can't find a job title that matches this. What I can find is a fairly updated list of employee backgrounds. This list has their number of employees at 360 instead of 512. This means it's an updated site. From this, we can see that the most common major that Valve, a video game company, employs are business majors. Now there's a lot to handle inside a company like this outside of their little virtual markets, but we can compare this to one of their main competitors. Riot, on the other hand, which is a much bigger operation, has business at 4th at only 6.8%. And I'll be honest, I'm not sure why 10.2% are photographers. Riot has over 4,500 employees, which means they have over 450 photographers. I'm not too sure what's going on there. But going back on track, Valve puts less focus on the development side, and anyone who has heard of Valve knows that much, and the resources end up in finance. If there's a company that I trust to skirt around laws that come their way, it would be Valve with their trillions of dollars between Dota 2, CSGO, and Team Fortress 2 markets. Without in-game economies, Valve stands to lose nearly everything. The International would not be as big of an event without it. People would still buy their battle passes, of course, but not having the ability to get real-world value from it would definitely hurt the prize pool. And without those yearly articles talking about how insane the prize pool is, the game loses a ton of outside engagement. And let's be honest, without skins, Counter-Strike would fall off a cliff. I still regard it as the best competitive game ever made. I would still play on weekends with friends, but I would not have 4,700 hours in this game if the market never existed. And this seems to be a pretty common opinion. And Team Fortress 2 is Team Fortress 2. Maybe Valve will actually fix cheating like they said they would. To me, it appears that Valve is in the clear at the moment with the way the European Parliament is approaching video games. But if the hammer comes down, no company will fight nearly as hard as Valve to find ways to wiggle around the laws placed. As it stands, your skins are safe, and until another discussion is held, they will continue to be safe. This market will not die so easy.